Welcome back to the Agatha May Detective Agency. Or if you're new here, welcome to Fantasy Island. Okay, that's only for those of us who are dusty enough to remember Fantasy Island. But no matter your age, I'm glad you're here. I'm Agatha May, and tonight's episode in the Nancy Guthrie case, we'll look at some new information that's been released, and we'll look at more rumors. Paid memberships help financially support this channel and ensure I can continue creating in-depth content for you. Yesterday, the FBI released details about the suspect caught on camera at Nancy Guthrie's house the night she was abducted. The suspect is male, about 5'9" to 5'10" inches, average build, and was wearing an Ozark Trail backpack. They've also upped the award to $100,000 that leads to an arrest of the suspect. During their search of the area around Nancy's property, they recovered a black glove that was similar to the ones the intruder was wearing. And they also set up a white tent on the front porch at Nancy's house on Thursday morning, but we don't know for sure exactly what they were doing inside that tent. Lois Gibson is a retired crime sketch artist that was the forensic artist for the Houston Police Department, and she came out of retirement long enough to offer a sketch of the intruder. Now, she readily admits that a lot of what she's drawn is guessing, but she was a forensic artist for 39 years, so a lot of her guessing is probably very educated guessing. I've superimposed her sketch of the suspect over an image from the camera footage, and I think maybe Lois knows what she's doing. But that didn't stop so many people from commenting that Lois was wrong and she had no clue what she was doing, and she was just a so-called expert that shouldn't be putting sketches like this out there, even though she did it for 39 years. So I'm not sure when it happened, but as a society, we have somehow decided that we know better than the experts. So maybe it's the fault of the experts that we've learned that not all of them are trustworthy. But I think a lot of it could be is that the internet has somehow trained us to believe that our opinion matters more than anyone's. Now, I still believe that there are experts out there who know way more than I do about a whole lot of different subjects, and I have no problem deferring to them when their body of work speaks for itself. Someone who lives 6 miles from Nancy caught an image of this guy on their Ring doorbell on January 23rd at around 3:30 in the morning, and then he showed back up at 5 that same morning. So he has some of the characteristics as the guy in the footage from Nancy's house, and he seems to be up to no good, but that's all the information that's out there about him for the moment. There's another video of a guy wearing one backpack and carrying another that was taken in the area the same night that Nancy went missing. However, he has been cleared as a suspect. And now for more rumors about Annie and Tommaso, Nancy's daughter and son-in-law. So people have been asking, how can Annie and Tommaso afford a $650,000 house? There seems to be the thought that the two don't make enough money to pay the mortgage on a house that costs that much. Well, their mortgage was for half that amount because they sold their old house and used those proceeds to pay for half of the cost of the new one, which means that their house payment will be very similar to their original mortgage. And I've also seen that Tommaso allegedly has power of attorney over Nancy, and I was unable to find where that had been recorded. So if someone has a copy of it, can you please send it to me? Or let me know what county it was filed in, because I couldn't find any record of it in Pima County. However, Tommaso did give his wife Annie power of attorney when they were closing on their home, which isn't uncommon for a spouse to do in real estate transactions. I know that some of you are absolutely convinced that Tommaso and Annie are behind Nancy's kidnapping, but do you have proof of it? I've seen people say that it's because of how they act or how they look, but that's not evidence. I know that people could say, oh, screw it, I don't care what anyone thinks, I'll say whatever I want. But Tommaso teaches 6th-grade students, and I'm sure that some of them have seen all the accusations. How is that affecting them? And what if one of the locals sees where somebody is convinced that Tommaso's guilty and tries to take matters in his own hands? We might look at it as being entitled to our own opinion, but voicing opinions like that can have consequences. According to one of his neighbors, the school where Tommaso teaches is supporting him 100%. I just haven't seen any evidence of the accusations against Annie and Tommaso. I also haven't seen any evidence that Tommaso's bandmate Dominic Evans is guilty, but people are adamant that he is. Now, there's been talk about his criminal record and how he's been charged with burglary before. Well, that charge is from 1999, and it was a solicitation to commit burglary, and he was only 21 at the time. He received 3 years probation and had to pay restitution of $358. So unless someone is just consistently being arrested for things like this, I'm not going to hold something that happened almost 30 years ago against them, and especially not when it happened before their brain was fully developed. And if you don't believe in redemption, then every single crime should have a life sentence attached to it. I've also seen it mentioned that there is no way that Nancy could have got in the house in between the time that her garage door opened and closed. Well, it opened at 9:48 and closed 2 minutes later. I don't know why people think that's not enough time for her to get in the house, but I've done some math. Even if she was only walking at a mile an hour, she would have still had time to make it about 170 feet. Now, the driveway goes directly into the garage, so Tommaso could have pulled up close enough to where Nancy wouldn't have to walk far at all. And according to the police, the doorbell camera was disconnected at 1:47, but at 2:12, the camera detected motion, a person or even maybe an animal. So, by disconnected, did they mean the software was disconnected? Perhaps the suspect used a Wi-Fi jammer? Or was 1:47 the actual time the doorbell was physically removed from the side of the house? And if so, does that mean that the motion that happened at 2:12 was on another camera? I'm curious because people have stated that if the intruder entered the house at 1:47 and Nancy's pacemaker didn't connect until 2:28, they were in the house for a long time. Well, there is a possibility that the suspect stayed outside waiting to see if disconnecting the camera would trigger a silent alarm to the police. Now, if they hadn't been inside the house before the 212 motion detection, they were only in there for 16 minutes. And something else that goes along with this is that people want to know what activities showed up on Nancy's watch during this time or any time after she got home that night. Well, that's assuming that she wore her watch to bed, and there's a chance she didn't. However, her pacemaker was connected to her phone, so it should show if there's a serious cardiac event that occurs. It's not in real time, but the data would still be there. So unless the authorities are just keeping it from the public, Nancy didn't die at her home, or the pacemaker phone app would show that her heart had stopped. And now let's go back to the footage of the intruder. Does he have a tattoo on his wrist? Well, there's a still image taken from the video that shows a dark mark on his right wrist. It looks like this. But if you go forward just a little in the video, you can see this view of the same spot. And to me, it looks more like it could be either a watch band or possibly the strap on a glove underneath the latex glove. I've seen a lot of people complaining that there are other cases that aren't getting the attention that Nancy's is getting, and they're right. There are thousands and thousands of unsolved cases that get very little exposure. When I do the research for my 12 Unsolved series, it is astounding at how many cold cases are out there. So if you want other cases to get exposure, watch some of my 12 Unsolved episodes and share those cases with other people. And I'm also going to start a new series soon that goes in depth into an unsolved case from each state, and then another series that will just be a list of some of the unsolved cases that don't have enough information to put into an episode, but are still just as important. So is it unfair that other people's cases aren't getting the attention that Nancy's is getting? I think so, and that is probably because her daughter is a celebrity. But even without having a famous daughter, her case stands out because it's very unusual for someone of her age to be kidnapped. And for whatever reason, there are just some cases that are talked about more, even with no celebrities involved. And I'm going to have an episode with ideas on how you can bring awareness to unsolved cases that are local to you, because that's where the real pressure starts, in our own communities. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. I appreciate you all more than you know. I should have the new Lace video out this weekend, so stay tuned to learn about another murderess who used arsenic as her poison of choice. Until then, stay safe and be happy.